デスストランディング待たせたな
From sapiens to ludens, we are homo ludens, or those who play. From the moment we enter this world, we instinctively invent ways to have fun, and share our inventions with those around us. We are not asked to do this, nor do we need reasons to create. It is simply who we are. We find one another and compete with one another. We laugh together and cry together, all while playing together. Our experiences bind us and liberate us. To share our most valuable experiences, we create stories, invent tools, and evolve the art of play. Play has been our ally since the dawn of civilization. Playing is not simply a pastime, it is the primordial basis of imagination and creation. Truth be told, homo ludens, those who play, are simultaneously homo faber, or those who create. Even if the earth were stripped of life and reduced to barren wasteland, our imagination and desire to create would persevere beyond survival. It would provide hope that flowers may one day bloom again. Through the invention of play, our evolution awaits. Kojima Productions. We are homo ludens. We are those who play. Hideo Kojima. Hello everyone, my name is Tyson, and welcome back to my series, Kojima's Deception. What you've just heard is the mission statement of Kojima Productions, and it will be the foundation upon which the rest of this video will be built. This is likely going to be the most important video in the series, though Part 4 will be important for how it delves into the elements of social media, as well as Kojima's other connections. In this video, however, I'm going to try and mostly stick to things that are directly in the games, and how they could be potentially based in virtual reality, or more accurately, were built for a late recontextualization that completely reworks the perception of both the Metal Gear Solid and Silent Hill series. Before we go any further, all of the theories presented in the video are just that, theories. If you have a problem with a theory, make a comment that points out flaws and I will take the criticism to heart. Even then, please take into consideration that this series is entirely conjecture or speculation, whichever term you prefer, and more than that, it's made for fun. It's basically fanfiction. I don't consider any of this definitive fact, only potential outcomes of this clear ruse Kojima has set up. With that said, if you don't believe Kojima has a highly ambitious vision for Death Stranding that far exceeds what this or any other medium has accomplished, and that if not officially, it's spiritually Silent Hills, you probably shouldn't be here because you're clearly ignoring solidified evidence, with the paintings especially. You can fight against it all you want, but that's pretty clear to me that Kojima is still working with the same deck of cards that he started with. That location scouting has been utilized for Death Stranding, and that is no coincidence. Enough preamble. It's the time you've all been waiting for, the highly anticipated Part 3. If you're here, you probably should have watched the prologue, parts 1, 2, and 2.5 of the series. The side-up is important as well, like the rest of the main segments, as it does have information of its own. Though, if you have to skip any of the parts, I would recommend skipping Part 1 as it mostly recaps stuff from Python and Selkin. If you still feel like watching without catching up, don't let me stop you, but you're missing a lot of context I've already given. Anyway, the time has come. Roll the introductory segment.
motion at the blood tonight, and I've tried to give you what you want. What is it that you want? Despair, with not a word to say. A routine, red light, suture, or sit and burn alive. We'd rather burn in fire, but I ain't gonna be here too long, too long. No, I ain't gonna be here too long, too long. No, I ain't gonna be here too so good at fooling on, so good. We often fool ourselves. We think twice.
Well, yeah. I had a special surprise prepped and everything. But it looks to me like your hands are full. No biggie. You can always tweak the rules a bit.
But sit and burn alive. There's no wrong, no right, and I ain't gonna be here too long, too long.
to know it. And then came the next explosion. An explosion that will be our last. Ah, yeah.
This is something that I touched on in my side op, but I'm going to go into great detail about here. It seems to me in Cypher that Kojima has not only decided that it's time to recontextualize the series for fans, but that he built the series with subtle hints that not all is as it seems. Clearly with the original Metal Gear, he didn't have this grand design in mind. He was just trying to make a game that not only was engaging, but took full advantage of the hardware of the MSX2. Kojima figured the best idea would be to avoid combat as it would prevent a large amount of sprites having to be drawn. As with games like Contra, what Konami was basically hoping for out of Kojima when they asked him to make an action game. Metal Gear 2 took the ideas presented in Metal Gear 1 and expanded greatly on them. Improved graphics, a story that took more than 17 minutes to tell, looking at you Kefka Productions, thank you for your movie edits, and some of the famous fourth wall breaks we saw in MGS 1 were actually originated in Metal Gear 2. For instance, remember having to look at the back of the CD case in MGS 1 for Meryl's codec frequency? That originated as a puzzle using tap codes in the manual to spell out the codec for Dr. Madnar. This is particularly interesting because he actually says, "Ah, I see you figured out my code." With this in mind, if Dr. Madnar is not only the man responsible for the many technological advancements in prosthetic limbs and robotics, but was it possible that he was also the mastermind who created the original engine the Copplethorne engine was based upon? And Copplethorne himself was someone who just stole the idea, similar to how Huey stole the idea for Peace Walker from Grannon, without crediting his source? Another comparison would be how despite the Copplethorne engine being used commonly in spin-offs, it was originally Kojima's idea. This would make him the architect of the simulation, similar to that of the Matrix movies. Kojima has expressed a fondness toward The Matrix, even going as far to say in an interview that the original Metal Gear Solid was like the first Matrix. Theoretically, the Copplethorne engine is the same engine that virtualized a world for Big Boss, and kept his will contained leading up to the events of MGS4. This explains why Dr. Madnar is still alive while looking as old as he did in Metal Gear 2, and why he surprisingly wasn't dead almost 20 years later by MGS4. His age isn't disclosed, but he was clearly already aged heavily by the time of Metal Gear 2. This would basically make Dr. Madnar the architect of the Matrix.
The Patriots are trying to protect their power, their own interests, by controlling the digital flow of information. I want my memory, my existence to remain. Unlike an intron of history, I will be remembered as an exon. That will be my legacy, my mark in history. But the Patriots would deny us even that. I will triumph over the Patriots and liberate us all, and we will become the Sons of Liberty!
Raiden, are you receiving? We're still here.
How's that possible? The AI was destroyed!
Only GW.
Who are you?
To begin with, we're not what you'd call human. Over the past 200 years, a kind of consciousness formed layer by layer in the crucible of the White House. It's not unlike the way life started in the oceans 4 billion years ago. The White House was our primordial soup, a base of evolution. We are formless. We are the very discipline and morality that Americans invoke so often. How can anyone hope to eliminate us? As long as this nation exists, so will we.
Cut the crap! If you're immortal, why would you take away individual freedoms and censor the net?
Jack, don't be silly.
Don't you know that our plans have your interests, not ours, in mind?
What?
Jack, listen carefully, like a good boy.
The mapping of the human genome was completed early this century. As a result, the evolutionary log of the human race lay open to us.
We started with genetic engineering, and in the end, we succeeded in digitizing life itself.
But there are things not covered by genetic information.
What do you mean?
Human memories, ideas, culture, history.
Genes don't contain any record of human history.
Is it something that should not be passed on? Should that information be left at the mercy of nature?
We've always kept records of our lives, through words, pictures, symbols, from tablets to books.
But not all the information was inherited by later generations. A small percentage of the whole was selected and processed, then passed on. Not unlike genes, really.
That's what history is, Jack.
But in the current digitized world, trivial information is accumulating every second, preserved in all its triteness, never fading, always accessible.
Rumors about petty issues, misinterpretations, slander.
All of this junk data, preserved in an unfiltered state, growing at an alarming rate.
It will only slow down social progress, reduce the rate of evolution.
Right. You seem to think that our plan is one of censorship.
Are you telling me it's not?
You're being silly. What we propose to do is not to control content, but to create context.
Create context?
The digital society furthers human flaws and selectively rewards development of convenient half-truths. Just look at the strange juxtapositions of morality around you.
Billions spent on new weapons in order to humanely murder other humans.
Rights of criminals are given more respect than the privacy of their victims.
Although there are people suffering in poverty, huge donations are made to protect endangered species. Everyone grows up being told the same thing.
Be nice to other people.
But beat out the competition.
You're special. Believe in yourself and you will succeed.
But it's obvious from the start that only a few can succeed.
You exercise your right to freedom, and this is the result. All rhetoric to avoid conflict and protect each other from hurt. The untested truths, spun by different interests, continue to churn and accumulate in the sandbox of political correctness and value systems.
Everyone withdraws into their own small gated community, afraid of a larger forum. They stay inside their little ponds, leaking whatever truth suits them into the growing cesspool of society at large.
The different cardinal truths neither clash nor mesh. No one is invalidated, but nobody is right.
Not even natural selection can take place here. The world is being engulfed in truth.
And this is the way the world ends. Not with a bang, but a whimper.
We're trying to stop that from happening.
It's our responsibility as rulers. Just as in genetics, unnecessary information and memory must be filtered out to stimulate the evolution of the species.
And you think you're qualified to decide what's necessary and not?
Absolutely. Who else could wade through the sea of garbage you people produce, retrieve valuable truths, and even interpret their meaning for later generations?
That's what it means to create context.
I'll decide for myself what to believe and what to pass on.
But is that even your own idea?
Or something Snake told you?
That's the proof of your incompetence right there. You lack the qualifications to exercise free will.
That's not true. I have the right.
Does something like a self exist inside of you?
That which you call self serves as nothing more than a mask to cover your own being.
In this era of ready-made truths, self is just something used to preserve those positive emotions that you occasionally feel.
Another possibility is that self is a concept you conveniently borrowed under the logic that would endow you with some sense of strength.
That's crap!
Is it? Would you prefer that someone else tell you? All right then. Explain it to him.
Jack, you're simply the best, and you got there all by yourself.
Oh, what happened? Do you feel lost? Why not try a bit of soul-searching?
Don't think you'll find anything, though.
Ironic that although self is something that you yourself fashioned, every time something goes wrong, you turn around and place the blame on something else.
It's not my fault. It's not your fault.
In denial, you simply resort to looking for another, more convenient truth, in order to make yourself feel better.
Leaving behind in an instant the so-called truth you once embraced.
Should someone like that be able to decide what is truth?
Should someone like you even have the right to decide?
You've done nothing but abuse your freedom.
You don't deserve to be free.
We're not the ones smothering the world. You are.
The individual is supposed to be weak, but far from powerless. A single person has the potential to ruin the world.
And the age of digitized communication has given even more power to the individual. Too much power for an immature species.
Building a legacy involves figuring out what is wanted and what needs to be done for that goal. All this you used to struggle with. Now we think for you.
We are your guardians, after all.
You want to control human thought? Human behavior?
Of course. Anything can be quantified nowadays. That's what this exercise was designed to prove.
You fell in love with me just as you were meant to, after all. Isn't that right, Jack?
Ocelot was not told the whole truth, to say the least.
We rule an entire nation. Of what interest would a single soldier, no matter how able, be to us?
The S3 plan does not stand for solid snake simulation. What it does stand for is selection for societal sanity. The S3 is a system for controlling human will and consciousness. S3 is not you, a soldier trained in the image of Solid Snake. It is a method, a protocol that created a circumstance that made you what you are.
So you see, we're the S3, not you.
This puzzle, while using real tap codes for letters, just modified using numbers as well, making it alphanumeric, makes the puzzle possible. Without knowing that, this puzzle would be impossible to solve. I know I'm not the first to point this out, but it's important to bring up that Kojima was entering the real world all the way back in the second entry of the series. Truly a visionary in what video games could be. It becomes even clearer by MGS 1 that things are not as they seem in the original Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2. Things aren't so grounded in reality. Sure, there's a giant robot, but in another reality. We could have had them too, hence their existence in Metal Gear Solid, a fictitious alternate reality based on our own timeline. Now, however, we have several events that aren't as easily explained away by science as much as they are in the rest of the series. Vulcan Raven's connection to ravens, Psycho Mantis's ability to jack into your mind, as well as telekinetic powers, Decoy Octopus's ability to absorb the DNA of victims and mimic the person using their memories and voice. None of this is explained. Then there's the famous codec fourth wall break mentioned earlier, Mantis reading your memory card, as well as having to plug in your controller into port 2 to take away his ability to read your shots. You can kill him without doing that, but where's the fun in that? It kind of just disregards the intent that Kojima was putting into the game, by putting you into the game. You're the demon that possesses Snake in all of the games. In a way, it's kind of cliche. The whole, in reality, humans are monsters thing. We've done much to poison our world via generations, which would also explain, for example, why Death Stranding seems to have very strong anti-pollution themes as a chiral mirror to what humans are doing in reality, in regards to our own creeping pollution problem. Hence several trailers of Dead Sea Life. As well as why in Metal Gear Solid, the original character, Raven, has that line where he says,
We'll play with him a little longer.
You would be wise not to underestimate him.
What did you think of him?
He is just as you said. In battle, he is as if possessed by a demon. Much like you, I would expect no less.
See?
Before we move on to MGS2, look at the UI, not just of this game, but of previous games as well. All of them are virtually identical, with the only real change being the color of the bar from red to a teal color. Doesn't this look like it's, a computer user interface in the 90s? There's also the inclusion of on-screen indicators for your equipment and weaponry, which looks yet again like a sophisticated computer interface. Also, remember that mind-jacking I mentioned from Psycho Mantis? In MGS1, there was a flash to white, then faded into the forced flashback. In Twin Snakes, however, they made it to where it fades to a TV screen static. Almost like you literally hacked into your mind in the Matrix as an entity similar to that of the Smiths, being able to take over anyone they choose, once the original had realized he could pretty much accomplish anything he wanted to being a part of the system. Granted, this wasn't fully realized in the first film, which is what heavily influenced MGS2, but MGS2 is where Kojima starts to make things really weird in terms of the paranormal. Granted, a lot of it is explained, either in the same game or in MGS4, but it was still highly odd upon a first playthrough without all of that context. Fortune's ability to deflect bullets, which ended up being a piece of tech that emitted high amounts of magnetic force to deflect bullets, which oddly enough didn't do anything to Knives or her railgun. Vamp's immortality, which ended up just being nanomachines, classic Kojima. Ocelot's replaced arm, donated from Liquid's dead body, possessing him turning out to be self-induced microgoja or brainwashing in simpler terms. It's all just very odd.
The nanomachines in his body cause his wounds to close and heal at an accelerated rate. Someone took the basic nanomachine technology I once researched and perfected it. In a sense, I'm responsible for Vamp. It's one of my sins.
On top of that, these seemingly unexplainable events being so simply explained could be explained as a case of Raiden's brain affecting the simulation by trying to rationally explain these strange phenomena. Speaking of simulation, that's the funny thing about MGS2. It outright explains that it is a simulation, and that none of what you're seeing except for a few choice characters are real.
It came as a complete surprise when Ocelot discovered the S3 data from GW. S3 stands for Solid Snake Simulation.
The S3 plan does not stand for Solid Snake Simulation. What it does stand for is Selection for Societal Sanity.
So you see, we're the S3, not you.
A simulated solid snake shaped by VR regimen. Sound like someone you know, Jack? I'm sorry to see you reduced to one of the Patriots' puppets. But I've made use of you, and their plan too. Solid Snake's sudden appearance, your arrival. It was obvious the Patriots were among my ranks. I had to smoke out the agent before the mission entered the final phase. You came in handy, as bait. Jack, those days during the Civil War were as real as they come. Every day was absolute, split between life and death. You ran from it. And now you've been led back to war by something less than real.
Raiden is held within the Copplethorne engine for the Patriots' experiment of social sanity, testing to see if a person can be fed a fictional dialogue and have them believe it. At the end, the GWAI reveals all of this to Raiden, and the fact that Event proves that S3 program was a success. This is where the S3 program was first implemented, and began erasing and changing information that we know as fact. This is why I had said in previous installments that by MGS4, the encyclopedia in the game is no longer a reliable source for all information, as you're reading information that has been modified for social sanity. I don't want to get off track though. Let's move on to MGS3, where the elements of virtual reality and even the inclusion of a series crossover began to get more and more suspicious.
Jack, I've got some important news. The head of the CIA has finally given us the green light for the virtuous mission.
Virtual mission?
No, the virtuous mission. The future of our Fox unit depends on it.
This line is going to be the springboard for this segment, covering MGS3. MGS3 has so many elements of VR that it's honestly quite mind-boggling that it's only recently that the series has begun to show cracks in the simulation. But perhaps that was Kojima's plan all along. Anyway, let's go into the elements of VR in MGS3. First and foremost, the UI has been drastically altered from previous entries. Instead of going for a single colored bar that changes depending on your health level, there's instead 2 white bars next to your character's codename, one indicating health, the other indicating stamina. The health bar no longer goes up from just eating rations as it did in previous games. Eating only affects stamina. Having high stamina is vital both for your slow regenerating health and for aiming accuracy. You could just consider this Kojima's focus on realism, but tell me, if we're going for realism, what the hell is life medicine? How does that work in reality? You could say it's a painkiller, but that's not what it's called, otherwise it'd just say something like morphine, and Kojima would probably have built in a toxicity system as well. No, instead he included the life medicine. This is mostly a set of training wheels for those who can't wait to heal during a firefight due to lacking stealth ability, but regardless, it is in the game as an item that removes realism. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Remember the UI I mentioned? Isn't it strange that they'd change it? I mean, if it ain't broke, well, don't fix it, right? Why remove color unless it's so low it turns red? Because it's an updated version of the Copplethorne engine. This UI change carries over to MGS4, though it can be customized in MGS4 unlike MGS3. On top of this, there are various elements of this game that aren't present in the other games. For instance, in all other MGS games, elements of the paranormal are just explained away, yet in this game there's exploding bosses, a field that turns from white to red, Vulcan's electricity manipulation, the Fear's cloaking, your cloaking, the Pain's ability to communicate with bees, all appearances of the Sorrow, especially where he's holding an active digital clock that appears like a hologram in front of him, the weird Guy Savage nightmare if you leave the game for a while and come back to it after being captured, a toy model of a frame from Zone of the Enders, as well as a Metal Gear Ray which supposedly didn't exist for another 45 years. All of this being unexplained points to post-traumatic stress disorder, hallucinations, and those affecting the simulation's perspective of what really happened, with exception of the Sorrow, but we'll get more into him later in Death Stranding. If you've watched part 2.5 and the side-op already, you'll likely know where I'm about to go with this, but I'm going to expand on it a little bit. I did want to point out something that many people may not know, which is that there are images both in MGS3 and later in MGS4 of certain moments that are important to Silent Hill lore, such as this picture that appears to be God's death. What's interesting about this is that Eva in MGS4 as Big Mama actually kind of resembles Dahlia Gillespie from Silent Hill. The question is, was this intentional? Was Kojima planting seeds for this recontextualization all the way back from MGS4, as he may have hinted in the MGSV debriefing video, which is still available on Konami's YouTube channel? In this side-op video, during the discussion of the Burger Meetup, I also mentioned that Robin Atkin Downes played various soldiers in MGS3, and that was his first role in the series. A theory I presented is that perhaps this was the inception of the idea of virtual reality, as Robin goes from being the voice you hear almost every supposedly Russian soldier, potentially even Johnny Sasaki with the infamous J right on his forehead. MGS2 Russians actually have Russian accents, to being the voice of your right-hand man in the form of Kazuhira Miller, the ultimate mindfuck, the system taking over your consciousness. There's also one thing that sticks out to me the most about this game in terms of VR. Ivan Rydinovich Rykov. You can't just say he's an Easter egg for the fans of MGS2 either. He is in the canonical story. You have to even disguise as him for a part of the game. What's strange to me about Rykov is that he genuinely looks identical to Raiden. Even the clones of Big Boss don't look exactly identical to him, with Liquid being naturally blonde, almost more resembling Kaz. Even further, there's a poster of MGS2 with Raiden on it, in his locker. This further ties MGS3 to MGS2's VR theme, potentially all being in virtual reality, Big Boss being forced to relive his past in the form of a nightmare, on repeat for years. To add on to this theory, it seems that Raiden has gone back in time, just as he did in Snake Eraser, to try and erase Big Boss from existence and prevent Solid Snake from ever existing. Perhaps in one timeline he fell for Vulcan and that was the universe they ended up deciding to portray in MGS 3. Perhaps he was brainwashed while in their custody and he doesn't remember who he really is. Moving right along to MGS 4, as mentioned, the UI has once again changed and been streamlined for modernization of the Copplethorne engine, but also has a few other things that just scream virtual reality to me. For instance, how the hell are you able to purchase items from Drebin when he's not directly near you? I mentioned in my side op, MGS4 has much darker themes than previous games, focusing on drab environments and the harshness of war, rather than the usual focus of stealth and survival. It definitely seems to be a jab at the ongoing conflict in the Middle East that's still raging on almost 20 years later. On top of this, all the bosses are basically retellings of previous bosses from MGS1, making Metal Gear Solid 4 Solid Snake's personal nightmare. Psycho Mantis being Screaming Mantis, Decoy Octopus being Laughing Octopus, Vulcan Raven being Raging Raven, and Sniper Wolf being Crying Wolf. They're all women too, which could be because of what the story says. Or it could be Snake's regrets of how he's treated the women in his life. Treating them like objects, manifesting them as the Beauty and the Beast unit, being highly erotic after removing their outer suits. Not to mention, in the first fight with Laughing Octopus, she is a shapeshifter, similar to Decoy Octopus, who we didn't get to see except in his false form of the DARPA chief, even seeing a glimpse of his face after Vulcan Raven goes to dispose of his body. One of the main mechanics of this fight is to discover where she's blending in, and one of the things she blends into is this painting, which while I couldn't point to a point in Silent Hill lore, it certainly has a Silent Hill feel to it. On top of that, all the other paintings in this building are just pictures of sheep and shepherds, which, if you think about it, kind of sounds like people in VR and their handlers. Huh. Before we move on to the V trilogy, I'd like to go over Peace Walker. Peace Walker is interesting because a lot of the things that people criticized about MGS-V actually originated here, and in many ways were improved upon in MGS-V. More than that though, I'd say it's actually a bigger gaping hole in the mask of lies that Kojima wears, disguising the series as anything but virtual reality. Before I go on, I'd like to make one correction from my side up. I had said that David pronounces Kaz as Kaz instead of Kaz throughout all of Peace Walker and Portable Ops, but there are occasions where he accidentally slips in Kaz instead of Kaz. Who knows why, but I figured I'd mention it just because I didn't want to be inaccurate about that. Anyway, as Python and Selkin have pointed out, there's a major discrepancy in the canon as far as what Kaz is aware of. In Peace Walker, at the end of the game, Kaz reveals to Big Boss that he knew who Professor Galvez and Paz were working for the whole time, but that according to him, he did it all for the good of Mother Base. This is where I started to distrust Kaz further, as in Ground Zeroes he clearly says, "I can't believe we ever bought that cover story," as though he never admitted to knowing their true identities. There's much more though. The elements of base management could be seen as a form of management training. The symbolism of Che Guevara could be seen as a form of mind control alongside all of the test signal slides. These are seen at the intro, and at a couple of points in the cutscenes. To me, this is almost the ultimate proof of being brainwashed, having images flashed in front of you while in a hypnagogic state of consciousness, hallucinating all of this within a simulation. To further drive this point home, there's both a false ending which seems to have happened in the simulation regardless of what happens with Paz later, being that there are tapes of Dr. Strangelove talking about the ghost in the machine as though the events actually happened. Driving this final nail in the coffin, during the sudden onset of the J-pop Metal Gear Zeke final battle, you can actually resist the feat of Metal Gear Zeke if you mash the action button fast enough. There's no physical way for this to happen. This is proof of a simulation. I don't even give a fuck. Big Boss was showing signs of post-traumatic stress disorder all the way back here in Peace Walker, as he has several flashbacks to the moment when he had to kill the boss under orders from the United States. On top of this, he was in denial most of the game about the true nature of her defection. Granted, he has a good excuse attempting to prevent the mammal pod from being completed, but that doesn't change even his own memories of the event not exactly lining up until after Strangelove pulls the truth out of him unwittingly through his silence.
There's a saying in the Orient,
loyalty to the end.
Do you know what it means?
Being patriotic.
It means devoting yourself to your country. As long as we have loyalty to the end, there's no point in believing in anything, even in those we love.
That's the way a soldier's supposed to think.
The only thing we can believe in, absolute certainty, is the mission, Jack. I'm defecting to the Soviet Union. Jack, you can't come with us.
I'd also like to discuss a scene that was cut from the non-Japanese release of Peace Walker, as I feel it's rather important to the plot. The sauna scene, yes, the infamous tape where Snake practically interrogates Kaz in the sauna naked, initially acting coy and unknowing about the sauna's uses, then utilizing it to extract information. Look at this shit.
Hey, won't you take your sunglasses off?
Oh, that's why it's so dark, huh? Boss? Is that you, Snake?
It's finished, huh?
What?
The new room.
Oh, the sauna?
It's not your style.
Huh?
I mean, isn't this a bit much? A sauna in Mother Base?
Boss, you were the one who approved it.
Yeah, I changed my mind during a mission. It's too expensive.
We've been through this before. We're using water from the ocean and saving energy. It's economic. And I thought since we have some Finnish soldiers on our side, that this might boost their morale. Hey, you want some soap? Catch.
No!
The sauna is popular with the staff, you know. You wait until it gets hot, and then you just pour out some water to create the steam. It's just like a Finnish sauna, and you can fit 20 people in here. So, Snake.
Yeah, I heard people have been injured in here.
Oh? That was just a bruise.
Just a bruise? I heard they won't recover for a month. Who was it anyway? I didn't get the full story.
Armadillo.
Were you here when it happened?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he just fell. You know, probably slipped on a bar of soap.
Slipped? Armadillo? Guy's built like a tank. He's got perfect posture. I've never seen him fall.
Yeah, well, he did fall. He fell, and all the birds that were resting on top of Mother Base went flying. Maybe he just got dizzy from all the steam.
I see. So the sauna made him fall, huh?
Boss?
Kaz.
Boss?
Is there anything you want to tell me?
About that, Snake. Are you going inside the sauna?
Sure. Lead the way. Show me how it's done.
Look at the steam.
That injury on your thigh.
Huh? What are you looking at?
Your whole body. Except the part you're covering with that towel. Kaz.
So this sauna is pretty refreshing. It beats all that dry tropical weather outside.
Yeah, so... Kaz, What are those leaves for?
They're called Vita. Leaves from Japanese white birch.
Vita?
You strike yourself with it. Like this. Stimulates blood circulation and gives you energy.
Let me see it.
Here.
This is good.
It was a bit too strong, boss.
Kaz, show me your back.
My back?
Yeah, get up and turn around.
Why, Snake?
Just take off the towel.
Snake? Where are you touching me?
It's not just your thigh that's injured. The injuries go all the way up to your ass. Looks like something clawed at it.
That's enough.
No, show me more. Turn around.
What?
Turn around.
Snake?
Kaz, are you popular?
Snake, where are you touching?
Do you remember? In the early days of MSF, you asked me how many women I'd had. Or were you really asking how many of them you could make yours?
Oh.
It's been 2 years, so how many new girls have you had?
This many. Approximately.
That many? You have such a busy life, yet you still find the time to keep yourself popular with the ladies. Look, I'm not going to control everyone's love affairs. That's your responsibility. You're a free man.
I would expect nothing less, boss.
Yeah, however, I also believe it's important to not set a bad example for the rest of the staff. You understand that, right?
You're getting a bit red, boss. Maybe I should...
Kaz, you're the sub-commander here. You should have a little more common sense.
What?
Gazelle came to see me after a mission. She wanted to talk. She's good looking, isn't she?
Yeah.
Did you do it?
Did she say we did it?
She said she saw you with Swan. Seems like a shame someone so good looking working in a place like this.
Oh, they both...
You came in here with Swan for a shower, didn't you? Just the two of you, alone.
That hurt!
So what's it going to be? Soap play, huh? Are you still blaming the soap? The steam?
It was just a...
Talk.
I'm sorry. It wasn't planned.
Wasn't planned? Armadillo saw you both, didn't he? Saw you with his girlfriend. And I'd say he was pretty surprised to find you both in here. Armadillo. So proud. Built like a tank. But then, he just lost his balance, right? Just happened to fall and the birds went flying, huh? Vita. Two-timer. What the hell were you thinking? Whatever happened to chivalry?
Snake!
To think I even have to give you this sermon.
I'm sorry. I'm a bad person, I get it.
Yeah, but it wasn't just them, was it? Dolphin, Puma. Do you want me to beat you for all of them, too?
I didn't do anything.
You son of a bitch. I'm gonna beat you down. Don't you move a muscle.
Boss, calm down. Dolphin, Puma, Gazelle,
You're treating them like animals and forgetting that they're people.
Wait!
Snake kick!
Please! Boss, neck!
Your body's hot.
You're hot too. I can feel it all over my body.
Doesn't it feel good being out here in the fresh air? Think about it seriously, Kaz. It's either women or us.
Both.
You bastard.
I'm just popular. What's wrong with that?
Nice punch. but it'll take more than that to take me down.
Impressive as always, boss.
What are you carrying there, Kaz? A Fulton recovery system. What do you intend to do with it?
How about a little flying, boss?
Listen, apologize to everyone. And try to be a little more careful.
Oh, okay.
And you're gonna clean the sauna for the next year.
Yes, boss.
Good. What are you all looking at?
Snake clearly doesn't trust Kaz 100%, so him supposedly being surprised about Paz and Professor Galvez's real identities in Ground Zeroes makes even less sense at this point. I wanted to back up to something I alluded to in the side-op regarding Huey Emmerich. It's possible that aside from his gross negligence of his child attempting to use him as a test subject for Sahelanthropus, as its cockpit was so small only a child could fit, that he really was innocent in the murder of Dr. Strangelove, who according to the Collector's Edition art book, was his wife. It is possible that he did indeed commit the murder, then commit suicide while floating aimlessly in the ocean on a life raft. And that would fit perfectly both with Hal's explanation of his suicide and even with the themes of Death Stranding, but I want to play the devil's advocate here for a minute. He was a scientist, but he likely had no real concept of raising children, hence his stupidity of even suggesting using Hal for testing. However, due to his condition being born without the use of his legs, and his cowardly nature, I severely doubt his capability to not only get her into the mammal pod, but also have the balls to kill her. She may have used him, and that would certainly be a motive, but she did also give birth to his only child, who he should have been there for. That was his biggest crime to me, was killing himself instead of being there for his son. At least in my eyes. I listened to all the tapes from Huey, Strangelove, Paz, and even the briefing with Peace Walker, but I found no evidence of anything else that really condemns Huey much other than being a bit of a cheat in terms of how he gets his success in robotics. I think his main issue is cowardice, hence suicide when faced with himself. Thank you for watching my video. If you'd like to see more, there are some suggested videos here on the screen now. Retro Hellspawn is now a proud partner with Humble Bundle. Check out the description below for more information on how you can help the channel, help some charities, and get some video games. Anyway guys, until next time, this is Retro Hellspawn, signing off.